Episode: Production Technology and Development Plan Reviews. The Production Deep Dive Tech and Development Plan Checklist. Let's talk about all the production planning during full-on development, after the pre-production phase has been completed and passed, for software creation. The mandatory production technology briefs, or tech design briefs, are as follows. Technology briefs should be, again, about one brief per subsystem, tool, or data pipeline, and should be ideally half a page to 3 pages. 5 pages is the absolute largest. Each game system, subsystem, custom tool, data conversion, and build pipeline tools should be addressed in their own tech briefs. There should be additional briefs for game-specific features such as artificial intelligence AI, character progression, and so forth. There should be a brief explanation justifying tech choices, demonstrating both an understanding of that technology and the team's cost-benefit analysis of it. All technology briefs should include an awareness and listing of existing tech, modified, retooled existing tech, licensed or middleware technology, and new tech that must be created. Mandatory technology briefs are things like rendering briefs. They might include sub-areas like 3D rendering, world terrain scene graphing, CPU-based or GPU-based sorting, clipping, and culling, character and object rendering and animation, geometry and texture compression. There's always movie and video playback briefs, or physics and collision briefs, artificial intelligence and AI brief, dedicated to just what the AI does and how it works, audio playback and compression brief, networking and internet briefs, tools and build pipeline briefs. Ask yourself, has any data validation been planned for the pipelines? What will be verified in them? Is a previous build available for artists, and how will they get them? Who will be the main contact engineering for art builds? What is the turnaround time on viewing various art assets or audio assets in actual builds? Is there any time plan to reduce turnaround times on building and viewing art, saving time for the content creators? Is engineering time available in production to support art builds, and how will that work? Let's talk about previewing and editing tools. There should be a dedicated or multiple, based on how many tools there are, preview and edit tool briefs. They should cover things like art previewing on actual hardware, or early previews on a PC or a Macintosh, wherever the content is being authored. The preview edit tools brief should include things like world and level editors, things that include terrain, surface type assignments and deformations, object placement, event triggers, area tagging, AI or path nodes, audio associations, and so forth. The preview and edit briefs should possibly include things like other previewing tools for art assets or audio assets. What specifically are they? How will they work? What hardware or software is required to run so that these content makers have the tools they need and they run efficiently? Preview edit tools might also include questions like, have we sourced or created documentation that explains the original art creation methods used by a source team? And what are they? Each asset that is to be created or edited should be represented in a total lifeline. In other words, from concept sketches to artistic previews and prototyping to actual content and finally tuning and quality. Preview and editing tools briefs might also include questions like, what are the translators that are used and which are the correct versions for development? They might include, have all the tools and translators required for art production been edited to run, if required, in the product's development environment and integrated into its art distribution tools? Preview and edit tools briefs might also include questions like, do we have in-game metrics to guide the reduction or creation decisions? Where are they? What are the conclusions from these? Is there a cost-benefit analysis process? Other questions might include, are wireless test kits planned for previewing? Is wireless part of the design and experience? How many of the test kits or development hardware do content creators need in addition to engineering? All right, well, let's talk about production development plan briefs. Development plan briefs, once again, should be one brief per dev planned tech, tool, feature, innovation, etc. A list of key development briefs should be generated to reflect an understanding and comprehensive plan to deliver the game or software as it has been designed. It should minimally cover the planned tech, the required tools, all the planned features, what is innovative and pioneering and therefore more risky, schedules, resources, and so forth. Mandatory development briefs should include things like the current top risks brief. This brief should include all the top major risks and concerns. And then all things that should be recognized and how they will be escalated. For example, a concern at some key point might escalate to become a risk. A risk might escalate to a major risk, and a major risk escalate to a top risk. Each risk should include a fallback or contingency plan, and there should be test cases or proofs to validate or invalidate the risk as early as possible so that the right decisions can be made about the product and decisions, again, going forward. There should be a brief on performance targets and what they would be at each milestone of development so that there can be clear evidence of commitment and progress made instead of it all landing at the last minute. There must be planned average and low frame rate targets. The same average and low for load time targets in different areas too, like from first boot to its first front end or splash screen, and from that splash front end screen to its back end for experiences, and how long it takes to go from that back end back to a front end. It should also include the same performance targets but for memory usage and memory fragmentation. How much, if any, fragmentation is allowed? What detection systems will exist in software? Will it be in the retail product? In development debug? In what? What will the mitigation plans be, and at each milestone, if those targets for performance and memory are not achieved? These will all be used as test for completions, or TFCs, that quality assurance or test can verify against. Again, what are the targets for every milestone until the game will ship or the software will be released? And there should be a brief on test plans. A detailed test plan should be provided for every milestone, explaining how each milestone item can be validated by QA. Of course, the test plan progresses in greater detail from the beginning as it goes to the end. In other words, the very milestone you're at has the greatest detail. The next milestone may be half that detail, and after that, half that, until it's not much more than a skeletal list of key deliverables. And then there's the proofs timeline brief. This brief should be a list of key proofs needed for the game, their target dates, milestones for completion. Some development plans might have their proofs occur before production begins, while others might include it within their production milestones. There may be several of each types of proof in any given milestone. They might even have the same proof recurring in future milestones, sometimes refining it so that things are improving and optimizing, polishing. Some example of valid proof areas could be proof of workflow, especially for external dependencies, proof of time estimates for each work area, including the time it takes to integrate into the main line of code. Nothing is done until it's in the main line of software. Other proofs might be proof of visual targets, the look and feel. What will the design look like? How will it be experienced? There might be proof of concept or playables for any feature or software function. There could be a proof of technology for any new or pioneered innovative technology. There could be a proof of X, a major milestone that proves the big picture game design or software experience actually works as envisioned. There could be a proof of performance, metrics for memory and media use, speed, etc. There could be a proof of art workflows or audio workflows for every asset that is created or edited. It could be the same for level design, and so on. There could be a proof of down resolution and depth and level of detail for any given graphic visuals, especially on platforms like consoles, video games. There could be a proof of up resolution and depth. Again, same idea, level of detail, and so on. These are all dependent on what target platforms you're going to and what the assets were rendered or created at. Do they need to be upsized, up resolution, or downsized, down resolution to achieve the memory or performance required on the given hardware targets or devices? There could be a proof of cross-platform builds across multiple platforms, demonstrating code and tools are truly shareable. Let's talk about some of the assets, because there should be asset briefs as well. Particularly, let's talk right now about asset list briefs. That would be briefs that outline the type, the quantity, archetypes for art, audio, levels, whatever there may be. This brief should identify all assets that will be required to finish the software, to finish the game, and who will deliver them, and when they will be needed. Asset list briefs might include questions like, what is the overview of how assets work together to deliver on the game visuals, according to the visual targets? What assets require editing or creation? What are they? Do they need dedicated tools? Another example there should be a master asset list that defines all the assets that will be created or edited and the details in how they will be integrated into the entire software. They should include greater detail as well, like in 3D modeling. What are the polygonal counts that are expected? What are the texture sizes or level of detail we anticipate? Are there lighting specific features? Are there vertex-related rendering effects, etc.? Are there pixel shaders? Are there vertex shaders? You get the idea. What are the game team approved budgets for each asset as listed? After reviewing the workflow plans and map, are there any outstanding tools that need to be created that have come to light? And if so, what are they? Is there a better way of approaching the work? If so, what are the risks associated with a new approach, or risk staying with the old approach? Is there an art development creative brief for all of the art and audio assets and their types that have been highlighted in the lists? Where are all the documents found? Where are the visual and audio targets to be seen? Do we have access to the appropriate versions for all assets from the source team where they are authored? Where can the original assets be found? Is it in the same version source control or somewhere else? What are the formats of the source files and what tools are required to use and view them? Where will the original source files be backed up, particularly if needed to recall for future use? Have source art and audio assets and art and audio tools been integrated into version control as well, ensuring they are not lost or the specific versions can be retrieved? Have all of the folder structures for the main branches and development branches been defined and determined so that everyone uses a consistent standard layout and structure? Are the assets used to be converted from their art tool into some interim format or other viewable asset format? What is the process by which all textures will be reduced? How levels of detail of textures will be defined and which ones will be used? What are the mip-map plans? Does this allow for selective reductions based on art input, or is it entirely done automatically, engineering other? What features will have parameters exposed through some kind of real-time editing tool so that content editors can actually see and tweak things in real time in software, expediting the iteration and refinement polishing process? Will art assets be acquired from a currently under development other product somewhere else? Possibly someone else still in production or even pre-production in parallel to this product or software? And what assets will be shared or leveraged between them? What code might likewise be shared or leveraged between them? Who is responsible for acquiring and integrating all of this code and assets that are being leveraged or harvested from another product or group? What is the process for acquiring the code and assets during production? Is it different than pre-production? How many drops or deliveries will there be from the dependent other group? And when will they take place? How will quality and security in those drops be managed? What contingency plans are there in place should they be late or miss their own deliverables, or even get canceled? There should be a localization internationalization brief. There should be a plan for localization. It should support Unicode, UTF-8, or some other multi-byte character encoding process, as well as identifying key graphics or speech voice files that will be needed to be translated for the different markets. Text should include culture changes as well. Things like numbers, dates, money symbols, and so forth all have different formatting, and they should be routed through common functions so that the game doesn't have to have separate translated content, but rather has translated content with dynamically filled numeric, dates, money, etc. fields. There should be any art that has been used in localization. For example, letters or words that are on a sign in a game would be text art. That's really graphics. It does not get localized or translated very easily, so it needs to be identified. Ideally, there is none. The localization brief should include video, specifically what video needs to be translated, redone, or at least what subtitles need to be placed, and is there voiceover dubbing? Speech should be identified in the localization as well. There should be lists of any kind of speech or spoken voice, lists for anything that requires subtitles, lists for things that are instructional, specifically voiceover, as opposed to color or maybe less critical detail. There should be in the localization brief things like stitching. That's like how grammar and syntax language is constructed in real time versus predefined full-on text strings. There should be multiplayer inter-territory play, including local area network, internet, ad hoc, online, etc., all represented for what needs to be translated. Any kind of menus or where users or their content is inserted into lists, especially those that are selectable. They must all be supported for international and localization. There should be local versus server provided text, including proper font and character set availability, especially things that have to do with legal or terms of service. The idea is that the immediate software may have immediate text that's relevant, but it should also have the ability to go to a server to fetch updated information. Again, especially where it ties into legal, terms of service, account information, etc. The localization brief should also cover cultural localization considerations, issues, and what solutions they've recommended or they're going to pursue. Much related earlier, the localization brief should stress and define font types, font sizes, character sets, and upper and lowercase defined what's required according to platform displays. Is it LCD, TV, HD TV, little tiny displays, color, depth, etc.? What are the display dimensions, depth, like I say? Are there differences based on the target regions? Are there even different platforms within the regions which might have yet different display dimensions, depths, etc.? The localization brief should include specifications that include templates for ongoing updates, as it is very common for localization to require ongoing additions as well as edits throughout development. The brief should include the localization group and game team that have signed off on a full and complete roadmap and plan with deliverables, dates, and owners during pre-production, production, and finaling. Again, localization is going to be a partner throughout all software development. Does localization have any special role with saved games? And finally, is there sufficient memory available in the worst case font and character count and screen real estate so that long words don't overwhelm the screen and memory? For example, German tends to be the longest characters to say the exact same thing from my experience. And so if you had to worry about will my text fit within the text box or area on the screen, try your German version first. If it fits, there are good odds everything will. There should be an external dependencies brief. Provide a list of all external group dependencies, identifying what they will provide, what their delivery dates will be, what the content integrity verification plan is, and what is the integration plan to take all of those assets and external dependencies into the main line of software and the team. External dependencies briefs might include areas like centralized or external art services, a player art department, something to do with specifically characters or bipeds, things that the human might relate to more closely. It could even be quadrupeds, like animals, again, things that people are familiar with. And these very same artistic creations could be used for the player to be as their avatar during gameplay. External dependency briefs might include other areas, specifically 2D art. Are there reference materials and have they been cleared by legal for encumbrance? Are there 3D art, models, textures, animation, lighting? Again, are there reference materials that have been cleared by legal for encumbrance? Are there worlds, levels, layout, creation, etc.? Are there technical art groups that we need to work with? What tools are required for everybody? Are there iteration and prototyping tools specifically? Is any training required? Are there any centralized interface front-end services or teams or external groups for the same? This might include interface design and art. Is there again reference material for all that, cleared by legal? Is there interface engineering in the front or back end, or for dynamic pop-ups or heads-up displays required? Are there centralized or external audio services for generating sound effects, music, speech, voice? Will anything be sequenced like MIDI versus digital recorded? Are there central or external services for audio for recording voiceovers or the related motion capture, etc., for facial recapture? Are there central or external technology services or teams, again with specified versions and compatibility concerns, for shared or leveraged tools and libraries, online cloud networking, licensed middleware, open source, and so on? I mentioned earlier, I'll say stressfully, by itself. Is there a motion capture requirement and plan, whether it be facial, full body, or acrobatic? Full scene recording? Is there video production or acquisition? Is there licensed content? What is the content acquisition and approval and rights process? Is there a list of required licenses to ship? License requirements should be at least per item. What are your contacts? What are the submission dates? Who are the required licensor approvals and what are their dates? What risks are involved with the license? Is there a contingency plan should something fail with the license? Is there a corporate or business affairs or legal group involved with your licensing? Who is working with the production team to ensure all of the above has been done successfully and correctly? Has quality assurance or QA been involved from at least the production milestone 1 all the way through ship? Are there servers or hosting on the internet and cloud for any online components or gaming? Are there contracted services for art, video, voice, even scripting, writing, motion capture, documentation, and so on. This is all about the contract legal side, not about how or what is being done. Let's talk about now media image creation and submission dates. There must be planned submission dates for every territory or region and to the respected approval agencies for their platforms, devices, including content age appropriateness approvals. And what are the regions, the target platforms or devices, dates, and minimum customer age for each region again? All right, let's talk about some production development plan scheduling briefs. Is the development schedule completed and documented? The entire schedule should be in written form, in such a state of completion that a new manager could understand the project plan, its dependencies, its dates and deliverables, handoff, interaction points, and so forth, within 1 week of getting exposure to the plan. If this schedule acid test cannot be passed, the game does not have an effective schedule and should fail its technical and development plan reviews. Is there a standard scheduling package being used by the team? Is it MS Project? Is it Jira? Excel? What is it? You just need to document it and be confident that it and everyone on the team can use it effectively. What is the capacity planning for the project? There should at least be a link to some kind of capacity plan document that you can go to, even if it's not in deep analysis with the group. What is the bug fixing capacity for the art team? The engineering capacity? What are the milestone dates for the project? Again, is there a milestone theme document, any long roadmap? Get it all. Ideally, there are links that everyone can access and see. Are there monthly milestones or every 6 weeks? What's the cadence? My experience is milestones greater than 1 month tend to be vaguely defined and include too many steps that can be missed or are glossed over during scheduling. Targeting monthly milestones is generally, in my experience, a good goal unless there are explicit justifications otherwise. Most managers have compromised with me and agreed to 6 weeks as a minimum for them and a maximum for me. And are there clear, testable deliverables for each milestone? High-level buckets of test for completions, or TFCs, must be defined before entering first production and fully completed before entering final. What test for completions, or TFCs, will a technical director or other leader or director approve? In other words, like a tech director, what technical briefs, technology proofs, underlying subsystems without user visibility, memory, media utilization, performance timing, tech-related prototyping, QA non-verifiables, etc., that are all something that only a deep technical person can assess, especially if they need to look at source code or functions, maybe even write code that will exercise and test it, or direct test engineering to do that for them. What TFCs will the CG supervisor or technical art director approve? For example, what art tools, artist workflows, animation budgets, etc. will be used by the artists? What and how will they deliver the look and feel targets? What test for completions or TFCs will production approve themselves? For example, they might approve the creative briefs, feature specs and details, playable tests and prototypes, feature verification, general quality. What test for completion, TFCs, will quality assurance or QA approve? For example, they might approve playable tests. They might approve features as done. They might approve general functionality. They may not necessarily approve quality, though there are many groups that might suggest they should. What is the schedule or timeline for art asset creation and editing? What will be delivered and when? All assets being touched should be represented here in a detailed roadmap. What are the tests for completion for art assets for feature-related work? What are the tests for completions for non-feature related work, as in tech or foundational tools and so on. And again, who is tracking this? Technical directors, CG supervisors, the normal program managers, who? What is the review and sign-off process for art assets? Who owns the final sign-off for what and when? Has time for meetings and management been factored into the total schedule? Leads, product leads, domain leads, all need time outside of coding to attend meetings, to mentor the team, assist in scheduling, firefighting on behalf of the team, helping resolve bugs. You cannot and should not schedule leads to 100% of their capacity. My own experience is to schedule them at most 80%, preferably down to 50%. Is there team buy-in on the schedule? Each team member should have seen and have agreed to the schedule, especially their role within it and their dependencies for their work. Is no task less than half a day or greater than 5 days? Again, I recommend 1/2 to 3 days as a target for any given project, task, or work. The shorter, the better. 5 days should be an outlier estimate. If a task takes less than a day, group it with other smaller tasks where possible that roll up into bigger tasks. Don't track any task grouping that is smaller than a half a day. Tasks that exceed 5 days should be broken into smaller tasks, even if they're being done by the same person or group. Is a 6-hour productive day, 5-day week schedule planned for? Planning for more than 6 hours of actual work output a day often fails. Planning on more time than those 6 hours, more than 5 days a week of productivity is generally not realistic. People can use the extra time, if they don't need it, to polish their work and catch up any unexpected delays. Crunch should be outside of the scheduled time. You should not plan on long crunch time. Has the art lead been scheduled to more than 50% or any other lead, as I've mentioned? What reason justifies this, in my opinion, transgression of proper scheduling of leads? The leads will have numerous tasks that arise throughout development and production that will compete greatly for their time. It is not realistic to schedule, in my opinion, again, them above 50% of their actual capacity. Is vacation and time off scheduled and allowed for? While the precise time for each employee's vacation is not always known, the total time off should be included at the back end, or at least the most likely times of the schedule. This time should be scheduled like any other task and not be taken from the contingency time. Vacations and time off should be scheduled. Are major events and pre-work and absent people considered in the schedule? For example, localization verifiable builds or LVBs. Are they planned? Are there convention demos that require extra work that need to be shown, such as maybe a demo at the once Electronic Entertainment Exposition, E3? Are major events like marketing and public relations or PR planned for? Are major events with licensors or their approvals planned for? Is software and game developer conferences planned for? Are release and magazine demos planned for? Is the iterative process for just platform compliance, not feature work, planned for? You get the idea. The key is we need always to be looking that everything is in the schedule, even things that may not seem related to product development or the final software. People may have to man booths, they may have to travel, they may have to write demo things, press releases, who knows? And while they do this, they're not working on the product. So all of those things should be built into the schedule. Is the overall development team capacity at or below 85%? No game should ever enter a tech alpha or development review with greater than 85% capacity. You need at least 15% as critical contingency time to deal with the unexpected issues and problems that will show up. As mentioned, I recommend 80% for most staff, 50% for most leads. Do not schedule directors. Contingency time should not be borrowed against, at least not willfully. It is a buffer that is intended to address unknowns and unexpected risks. They always happen. Bug fixing time should not be planned as part of the 80 or 85% allocatable development capacity for the schedule, as again, the extra 15 to 20% is intended for the unknowns, for unexpected, for especially hard to fix bugs. It is not for new features or anything the project manager or project leaders want. In terms of features, is a buffer margin factored appropriately for complex tasks and inexperienced staff? For all new or complex tasks and inexperienced, at least inexperienced in the technical domain they may be working in, or unfamiliar tools, there should be an appropriate additional buffer margin applied for those people. They will have additional unexpected issues. This buffer is intended to address, again, things that they did not know or may yet discover that impact the schedule. Are individuals assigned tasks on the schedule? Without one specific person assigned to each task, it becomes hard to identify who is actually delivering the work and who's not. This will help identify who needs help or training. Is superstar performance used on the schedule? Although superstars on your team can work twice as fast as anyone else and do it with fewer bugs, avoid planning for their extraordinary speed and accuracy though. For you need them to have extra time to mentor and help others and firefight the most hard things. Planning for their high performance leaves your schedule in jeopardy should they actually leave your project. High performance superstars can quit. They can be forcibly transferred. They can be injured. They could die. All circumstances put your project at risk when you rely and plan on a superstar and their ability to do amazing things. Are dependencies linked between tasks and milestones? Dependencies should be established between tasks and milestones, obviously. Never hard code start and end dates in a plan or a schedule. Human error can lead to misinformation and very wrong schedules. There may ultimately be half a dozen or even a dozen dependencies on some tasks. But it's a lot easier to do it up front than to remember it all by yourself. Some project management packages, once you put a deadline or a key date, do not update all subsequent deliverables or prior deliverables depending on how it's been configured. You need to be very cautious of auto-generated dates and likewise cautious of hard-set dates. Are licensor dependencies included? And who's responsible for them? Licensor dependencies should be tasks on your schedule, just like any other dependency. For example, a licensor review and approval milestone should be there. There should be age-related reviews such as ESRB. There should be manufacturer reviews, again, like an Apple, a Google, a Microsoft, a Sony, whoever. They should all be planned for. Who will be responsible for these approvals and the relationships with those platforms and partners and licensors? What are the major dependencies between art and engineering that will need to be synchronized, coordinated? For example, are there new features that require art for testing, that require maybe pipeline tools to convert the assets to some other system, interim format, or a final format that's in the game, or perhaps it pre-bakes and fixes up all the addressing so it can be directly loaded into a GPU or loaded directly into video RAM? Are there external dependencies defined and included? External dependencies should be tasks on the schedule, again, like any other dependency. There are many dependency groups that might be included, internal or central or shared. Art, audio, user interface, external or other groups and studios, contractors, consultants, motion capture training, schools, hardware and software, development and equipment. There are so many types of external dependencies. Everything needs to be included on the schedule, right down to when a computer arrives. Is there a schedule revision milestone? This might be a surprise to many project managers. It is important to plan for the development schedule to be revised due to feature design changes, unexpected events, technology discoveries and conclusions, and so forth. By planning for an update to the schedule, management will not be surprised when you show up potentially even with revised major dates and deliverables. Are there formal milestones defined like pre-alpha, alpha, pre-beta, beta, final, and so forth? Plan for internal test runs for things like alpha prior to the official alpha milestone. This is the team's dry run for a real alpha to protect their reputation, of course, and be more efficient. Make sure the team knows what is expected for each major milestone, especially since these milestones vary in definition from company to company, from group to group, from studio to studio. Are there sustained frame rate checkpoints in the schedule? Are there load time checkpoints in the schedule? Are performance analysis checkpoints in the schedule? Whether that's performance or memory use, etc. Some platform publishers may provide code and performance evaluation services. They should be taken advantage of and planned for if they exist. Is there a post-mortem planned for in the schedule? A post-mortem should be required before the final milestone can be approved. Post-mortems are critical to identify lessons learned and provide insight on how the development process, tools, and product itself should be modified or refined in the future, as well as any technical debt that may need to be paid. When will each and every work order docket with detailed deliverables be delivered from central, shared, or external groups? Is it scheduled? What dockets exist that will be created by these groups themselves? Again, everything must be scheduled. Are all staff and resources fully utilized and verified with resource usage analysis? It is important to verify that all staff and resources are fully utilized throughout the entire project. While it may be necessary for response-oriented roles to be called out with 0-day time allocations at the top of a project, with some kind of note or reference, it is still important to schedule everybody else. Task-driven resources should be checked in resource usage for being redlined, overtasked at any given time, and check to see that they have no gaps in assignments. Times in principle they're just sitting on their hands, ideally at least working on things they find valuable. There is an entire discussion on finaling and finishing a product or a service for release. That is a very different and another deep dive. I hope that all this information on production reviews and the prior episode on pre-production reviews has at least offered some value, some nuggets to you on how you might finish your project without needing a product fixer. May your product development shine with great success.